Welcome, Haroon, to the Leaders Who Care series. Great to see you again.
Good afternoon, Mark. Very good to see you as well. Thank you.
It's always better in person when I've met you then, but this is fine as well. And a shout out to Chris Wedding for our intro as well.
Yeah, Chris Wedding he introduced both of us. Great guy, by the way. Awesome advice we always get from him.
He is good. He is good, and yeah, we've known him for a while now, and so I was grateful that he got us together, and I'm grateful for the impact you're making and have made, and that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But let's start with, if you can just introduce yourself, not the business stuff yet, but who you are, where you're from, where you live now, family, something you've never told anybody in the world you want to reveal now. That's cool too. Just tell us a little bit about you.
Well, you guys know my name. It's Haroon. I'm married. My spouse and we have a daughter who's just given birth to a grandchild, about 3-4 months old, Caroline. And so we're very excited to be grandparents. We're not excited to be called grandparents as much as so that's I've been in the United States since age 18, and before that, before I came to the USA, I studied in an American school in Pakistan. So from a young age, 2nd grade through 8th grade, I went through a very American, education. The same sort of books that you would read here. In those days, it was Open Highways or Open Vistas, and same sort of TV shows like the Honeymooner reruns or Disney cartoons, right? And so we grew up in a class. A typical class would be 30 people, and in those class of 30 people, you could have a teacher from almost anywhere in the world. We had teachers from all over Europe. We had teachers from Australia, New Zealand, but most of the teachers were from the United States. And then we also had kids. We had about 20 different nationalities in any class typically.
So great.
So you end up growing up in a very global sort of a thinking. And I was fortunate that my parents put me through that school. But about 8th grade, they realized that Haroon is not shaping up very well. He has no discipline. So they took me out and put me in a boarding school, which had been left over from the times of the British Raj in India, very, very top school in Pakistan called HSN. And so, boy, was that a rude awakening. It's sort of like being taking a jump into one of those Wisconsin lakes in the middle of winter. I went from having a lax attitude to having punctuality reinforced 8, 10, 20, 30 times a day down to the minute.
So your parents had mission complete.
Yeah, parents mission complete, and I think it shaped me up to be a better disciplined person. Yeah,
that's awesome. Do you have siblings?
I have 2 sisters. They also went through a similar experience with American school, and then they both also went to a convent of Jesus and Mary, which in those days were Christian-run schools, and so they came out with a very international sort of an education as well.
That's cool. So you kind of gave a hint of what you were like as a kid based on what your parents thought you needed. And sometimes kids don't like it, but they don't understand the big picture that the parents had, which sounds like that. But tell us a little bit more of what you like. Were you like a kid based on what you're doing now? Were you the type of kid to put your finger in the plug and wanted to see what happened? Or were you the type that took things apart and rebuilt them? Did you play sports, music? What were you like?
I think I would classify myself as more of a dreamer of thinking what things would be like if they were like this or if they were like that. And I think that showed up later on in life as I learned more and came to the US for education. I'd classify myself as a dreamer and possibly a contrarian thinker.
I'll bet the diversity of kids that you went to school with probably helped that.
It certainly did. I mean, my best friend was the Indian ambassador's kid when there were excellent diplomatic relations between India and Pakistan, and there was there was a lot of exchange, and so that was hysterical because culturally we're very similar people, but the this man-made boundary divides the two countries, and it's a deep chasm created by politics and nationalistic agendas. But in reality, we're very similar and the same people.
Yeah, we have a quick little story. An astronaut is one of our co-founders, and he was up in space station and everything. And long story short, but he talks about it in his speech. He said he was still amazed when he looked down at Earth, couldn't believe it, even though he'd been trained for it already. But when he came back, he said he had a little bit of a rough landing, and he saw there was grass and a rock and dirt and whatnot. He realized he was home, but then he realized he was in Kazakhstan. And the point was, he was home, and Earth is home. And he said, still, you can have a home and be proud of your home, but it gave him a whole different, what he calls orbital perspective, to your point of the borders and whatnot, that, we're all together on this. So interesting. Let's start talking about your journey a little bit, starting with education. You got your bachelor's, master's, electrical engineering. Clearly, that's what you were going for. And you've had from the start diverse experiences in electronics and product dev and technology, obviously, team management, project management, the whole bit. Do you remember what you were envisioning early in your career as it went along the way?
I actually thought when I started working, and let me take one step back. By the way, I studied economics originally at Duke, and halfway through the economics curriculum, I realized, man, this is a little bit too easy, and there's too many assumptions in economics. And maybe I should select double E. So I went into double E, aided by a couple of friends, and I realized, oh my God, this is far tougher. But I also realized that if I got a degree or two in double E, that I would maybe have a different but better career, and so that's what forced me into double E. And then when I got to finish my BS, there was an unbelievable professor of power electronics at Duke. Duke had one of the leading programs in the world, one of the top 3 or 4 programs in the world. I had a chance to study under this amazing mentor, Dr. Wilson, who also taught me work ethics. He taught me how to have relentless love for your profession, and taught me how to get deep into a problem and think beyond the blocks that you presently have. So that was an amazing experience in creating a zeal, right, for doing new things and for exploring and for research. So when I came out into the real world, I wanted to be a control systems engineer. That's it. That's all I thought I wanted to do, because you could change a simple equation in a massive machine, and the machine behaves totally differently. So it was just awesome intellectual stimulation to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing how certain things trigger us to just dream and shit like that. So we founded our firm, Fifth Element, on the premise, on the basis really that leaders in their businesses can do way better when they're also doing good at the same time. And that's that theory has presented it. And unfortunately, it took a long time to realize that, you can do both at the same time. And you were clearly an early leader in understanding this based on what you've done, that, economic, social, environmental impact they were totally interconnected. How did that evolve for you after, getting your EE education? How did that evolve for you? Share how you learned and succeeded to raise significant capital with that in mind, that you can have economic results and make an impact, environmentally as well.
Well, I'll share with you one incredible experience I went through, and it was we were having some sort of distortion on the output of our machine. And distortion is undesirable in electrical signals, and so we were supposed to come up with a method to clean it up. And one day, through some mistakes that one of our interns made in a simulation, we discovered a way that would really clean up the harmonics through controls. Meanwhile, the Japanese, who were known for miniaturizing things, making things really small, they had these huge harmonic filters. So we added a part about the size of your thumbnail and some equations, and they had these massive, massive filters. And that's when I realized, oh my God, that's the power of thinking creatively, where you eliminate, lots of material from moving around. You eliminate all that transportation. You eliminate all the energy going into forming that material, and it goes on and on. And what a powerful statement to make to a customer that this small machine does the same thing as this gigantic one.
No, that's actually pretty, it reminds me of my college days when we had, it's going to show some age here, I guess, we had punch cards back then. And we had to bring the punch cards to the guy that had the big, huge computer that took up the whole room. God forbid you dropped your punch cards, because there was no control there. But you're right, one massive computer. And, we didn't think any different necessarily at that point until maybe we got our first Texas Instrument calculator, which was pretty cool. That type of thing. The fourth industrial revolution is all about technology, and they say that the fifth is really technology, being AI, AR, VR, et cetera, et cetera. The fifth thing about humanity and how we use technology to make it better for humanity. Let's talk about DG Matrix, which is, the one that we've talked about most, that I'm fascinated by. First of all, how did this opportunity come to you? And let's start with that and explaining the name.
Sure. So the opportunity came with a colleague who was starting a company with a special circuit that he had, and he was looking for people to be part of this company one way or another. And so I invested some money in this company and became an advisor. And as time progressed, I moved from advisor to a more formal role. So I now have the distinction of being a co-founder of DG Matrix, as well as CEO and president. And my colleague is the chief technology officer. He's a very famous professor in this arena. And so we've taken his invention and we're basically commercializing it, productizing it and commercializing it. So that's how it came about. But we realized early on that, oh my God, if we get into EV charging and microgrids, we're going to reduce the amount of material and the volume of the product anywhere from 1/4 to 1/20th of the size of incumbents. And that's a huge difference in terms of installation ease, in terms of transportation, manufacturing, in terms of troubleshooting. It's far more reliable when it has far less parts. So we really thought that we had something, but we focused on the largest markets first to really get that going. But yeah, it was all about saving the planet through decarbonization, through electrification, but doing it using a lot less material than other people were doing it.
Yeah, that was fascinating to me when you shared that with me, how, number one, how it's a game changer, and that's not just words. You've got a lot of leaders that are really standing behind this and are excited about this. So it's not only the most compact, and fast charging for EVs and fleets, but you talked to me about the sustainability impact. For example, you can manufacture more faster type of thing and get it out, which is something that's always been a thing argued against EVs, that there's not enough chargers. So why should I buy, an electric car? Talk about that, all the aspects where it does make a difference. And then again, the economic perspective while it's making an impact environmentally.
Sure. So first of all, the biggest effect is that if you can charge EVs, there'll be more EVs on the road, right? And it's one of those catch-22s. You need more EVs to justify a bigger charging infrastructure, but you need the bigger charging infrastructure for people to buy EVs, right? And hence the government steps in with incentives. And whether you believe that it's right or wrong, right? People actually enjoy driving EVs. And it seems like the trends are pretty heavy for the world to shift a substantial amount of their transportation needs to EVs. So when you go from ICE, internal combustion engine, to EV, at least after the car is produced, you end up having less emissions. But there's a debate on what is the break-even point, because EVs need more emissions in the manufacturing process and so
Right.
forth. But there is a break-even point, and for sure, the air gets cleaner when you're not burning gas in any city, right? The other thing is that when you're making chargers to charge the car, you're making the charger far more efficient, generates less heat. So that less heat generated contributes to less of a global warming effect. I think we've focused on that rapidly. And today we have an industry leading efficiency of 95 to 98%. And at high power, we're at 90, 96, 97, headed to 98. And I think those numbers are pretty phenomenal for a 200 kilowatt charger. You might see that on benchtop units more than you might see on 200 kilowatt chargers, but we're there. Then you use a lot less material. You transport a lot less material. You have 1/5 to 1/10 of factory size. You only have a workforce of 25. Your competitors have a workforce of 200. So without belaboring every point, what's going to cost less? 200 people to come to work every day, or 25? 25. What's going to cost more? A 200,000 square foot plant with its energy needs, or a 15,000 if they produce the same volume of goods? So we have taken unbelievable care in just crunching down all the material. And in a second phase, we're going to do another step, which is confidential, so I can't talk about it much, but we are rapidly focused on reducing the material. Then the second part is the material we're using should be recyclable. So there's an absence of a lot of plastics inside here, even though it might be cheaper. So we're using steel, stainless steel or aluminum that can be recycled. And in the next phase, we're going to source green aluminum or green steel to make it friendlier, and then have a circular economy play by being able to recycle products that come back from the field.
So I love that, because you talked about being a dreamer way back as a kid. If you don't start, you don't get to the evolution of even more and better ways of doing things and like that, versus just saying it doesn't work, it can't work, it's impossible.
So the interesting thing is we're also handling another key problem in our circuits, and that is that we can combine solar and storage and fuel cells and AC generators, pretty much, and the grid, any power source you want, all into our multi-port design. It's a very unique design where in any of the ports you could have AC or DC. Nobody has such a design. All ports are isolated from each other for safety reasons. Nobody has such a design in this compact footprint. We can go down to 1,000th of a second and route energy in any increment you want, from X% from solar, Y% from the battery, Z% from the grid. We can minimize your total utility bill, or we can minimize the greenhouse gases that the process is associated with. And we do that all automatically. So that is the other game changer that we hope to bring to the market in the next 6 months, because the grid doesn't have enough juice to charge all these EVs. So you combine that distributed generation, hence the name DG, into a matrix of sources and loads, then you have you've eliminated the grid constraint, hence DG matrix.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just even I don't know if I call it the simple things, if you can manufacture more faster, which solves the problem of, well, there's not enough chargers out there, so I don't buy a car, to the fact that you can charge faster too, which is in the normal sense for humans. My son has an EV car too, and it takes 2 hours to charge. That's a long time to charge if you're on the move. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it does that as well, right?
Absolutely. I think our charger is on the very high end of power for cars, and we are limited by the car's battery management system, not because of the throughput we can provide.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So what's the status? When can people expect to see the DG Matrix chargers coming off the assembly line and into our transportation system? So
we are making chargers right now. but we're making just a couple a month, and these chargers are being used for testing in the lab. They're being used for certification tests that we check out before we send it to the agency for their approvals and their tests and their approvals. In January, we'll be installing pilots starting January, and right now we're oversubscribed for pilots, so we're happy about that. And arguably or realistically, our sales pipeline today, which is the opportunities that we've had discussions with customers, exceed, it's not contracted, but that's the second part or second phase or third phase, is well over $1 billion, right? And for a 1 year old company with this game-changing technology to come out and be in a certification phase, pilots coming out in less than a quarter, it's a pretty amazing place to be in with such a pipeline. So we're just looking forward to the next phase where we can build a small factory in Raleigh. We don't need a big one to achieve revenue of 100 to 200 million, and then start to give our customers solutions they really like, highly reliable solutions that are easy to use.
Yeah, pretty exciting. We have a couple other clients, different industries that are into micro factories. That mode too, that you don't need massive factories to do stuff anymore. And in fact, micro factories, you can actually have more in different places to even move things faster to the public.
Absolutely, and I think your other client has an excellent, or your partner has an excellent vision, because with micro factories, you can get into smaller buildings far more quickly. You can hyperscale faster, and you can adjust faster.
And the shipping is cheaper because it's different places that you can, rather than have to ship it from Timbuktu somewhere 5,000 whatever miles to go somewhere else. It's pretty exciting. And last thing I want to ask on that really quick, Tesla has their chargers. Some of the other companies the car companies trying to do their chargers. Is it going to look like no more gas stations after transition to just chargers, or how do you think it's going to look in the future?
Yeah, there's a lot of people predicting that, oh my God, right, in 2035, the California rules will take effect and it'll be nothing but EVs. And some people are saying no, as soon as the elections are held in the USA, it's gonna be a less growth for EVs. Some people are arguing it's going to be hydrogen cars. So it's difficult to say what will happen in the end, right? I do think there's a transition happening. It's a massive electrification trend. It's something that hasn't happened, such a major trend hasn't happened in 100+ years. So it's something that in 2-3 generations, you get an opportunity to participate in that electrification. And even with Tesla and all these other players, the market is massive. And then when you've got a product that is truly differentiated by multiple factors due to size and due to fast production and due to multi-port ability to add energy, I mean, the interest is off the chart. So I think we'll be able to carve out a healthy, very healthy place for ourselves. We also have product besides EV charging for microgrids, for commercial and industrial buildings, 100 kilowatt to a megawatt.
Yeah.
And the same product, which fits into the EV charger and does microgrid, pretty much the same product fits into data centers. And all those 3 markets are massive, Mark. So
the DG will end up standing for do good.
Do good, digital grid, excellent. all those.
I love it. I love it. Last question on this part. I always have to leave everybody wanting a little bit so you can do a sequel. That's what happens in LA, right? You always need a sequel. So a client told me once in 2021, he told me, Mark, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly, which I thought was an incredible statement. And especially since very often you talk to people that it feels like 2020 was yesterday and years ago, all the same thing. So with everything that's happened over the last few years, can you share what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Yeah, it's incredible what happens when you have a pandemic, right? A related shutdown. It forces you to reevaluate your priorities. I think it allowed me to be closer to my family. I had been working 100-hour weeks before that. I did not have much time for my family, and I found out how much I was missing. I even a little pet, like our little kitty cat, we developed a closer bond because I was home.
That's awesome.
Right? Things like that. Things like that. You begin to appreciate that you can breathe without worrying about whether that breath is going to give you some germs that'll lead to your premature demise, right? I
Right.
think you begin. I at least began to have gratitude for a lot longer list of things than I had before, and more basic things. It wasn't materialistic pursuits. It's just things like, hey, I actually have my health today. I don't have any known terminal disease today. I can use my hands without pain. I mean, if you get into that basic level of meditation,
Yeah.
cup will overflow no matter what you have. And if you don't, it can generate a tremendous amount of misery because you don't have that next model car, or you don't have this, or you don't have a gazillion dollars in the bank. But these basic things are what you realize you should be grateful for. And you want to be grateful for them before you lose something, and then you say, oh, I wish I had that.
Absolutely. Sometimes we it takes losing something, unfortunately, for us to realize what we had. What are you most hopeful for?
I'm most hopeful, Mark, that the world comes to a more peaceful state, that innocent lives that are getting lost on all sides go down. I'm hopeful that young men and women who are soldiers who are getting killed in the name of their country, that stops. I would like to see more universal peace, and an ability to listen to each other more rather than kill each other more.
Amen to that. That's for sure. Yeah, we're working with a lot of clients now on a program called Nonflict to share with all their employees. It's a way that we can learn how to engage better with each other, and you don't have to hate somebody over conflict, because conflict's just different ideas, and there's always a way to figure it out. So amen to that, as they say, from your lips to God's ears. And thank you for being a leader who cares, because throughout your career, you've been creating things that do make a difference. And I'm excited for what you're doing now. So thanks for sharing all about it.
Thank you for a great chat, Mark. I think we hit it off first time we met, and I appreciate this opportunity. And just to give you a line for the sequel, I hope that I'll be back.
That's a new one. Thanks, Haroon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.